In the month of November, the Church has a long tradition of praying for our beloved dead and for all the souls in purgatory. It was just last Monday evening that we celebrated All Souls Day, and even here at the cathedral there was a special Mass that evening of remembering especially all of the loved ones who have died in this cluster in the past year. Many churches have memorial tables where parishioners can write in a memorial book the names of their deceased loved ones that they want to remember in prayer throughout the month of November. Or on those tables, they can place photographs of their loved ones who have died and whom they want to remember. For us as Christians, belief in life after death is something that seems to be an obvious and a vital part of our faith, despite the fact that it is an experience that is beyond our understanding or our imagining. Today, as Paul is writing to the Thessalonians, one of the things he says to them in those opening words is not to grieve like those who have no hope. For he reminds them that Jesus, who was raised, will bring with him all of those who have died and bring them into his company. Shortly, we're going to be reciting the Creed, and it's in that we express our belief in eternal life when we say those closing words, "I look forward to the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come." This is our faith. This is our hope as we look forward to joining those who have preceded us. And yet, a question that arises for our reflection is, are we ready? Are we prepared? On these last Sundays of the liturgical year, our attention is drawn to not only the second coming of Christ, but also to those themes of what we call the last things. That is, death, judgment, heaven, and hell. Our readings today certainly remind us of our need to be awake, to be vigilant, to be alert, and to be ready. Vigilance and being ready is easy to see in this gospel parable of the 10 virgins that Jesus shares with us in Matthew's gospel. Now, the parable at first sight might seem very strange to us, but it does tell the story of what could have happened at any time in a Palestinian village and could still happen today, as it describes a wedding custom of how people wait for the bridegroom to arrive for the wedding feast. Like so many of Jesus' parables, this one does have an immediate and local meaning, as well as a wider and a more universal one. Now, the obvious or the immediate significance of the parable is directed to the Jews of people's time who are hearing Jesus tell the story. The Jews, who are God's chosen people. Their whole history should have been a preparation for the coming of the Son of God. They ought to have been prepared for him when he came, and yet instead there were many who were quite unprepared. Yet it's in the wider and the more universal significance of this parable that there are two warnings for us as we gather here today and we reflect upon it. The first is that it warns us there are certain things that cannot be obtained at the last minute. Now, all of us have probably crammed for an exam at some point in our academic lives, but we came to learn that it is often too late to be preparing on the day of an exam. It is too late to acquire a skill if one does not already possess it. And similarly, it is easy to leave things so late that we can no longer prepare ourselves to meet with God when he comes. Yes, there are certain things that cannot be obtained at the last minute. Yet secondly, the parable warns us that there are certain things that cannot be borrowed. The foolish virgins found it impossible to borrow oil when they discovered that they needed it. One cannot borrow a relationship with God. That's something that we have to possess for ourselves. We cannot be living on the spiritual capital of others, which they have amassed. They are certain things that we have to acquire for ourselves and cannot borrow from others. And a personal relationship with God is one of those things that we cannot borrow, but that we must have and possess for our own. The parable this morning is not a matter of the wise virgin's lack of generosity to the others, but rather the inability for someone to claim for themselves the good deeds, the living faith, and Christian decisions of another person's life. Yes, there are some things that cannot be borrowed. The parable also is not about good and evil. It's really all about being ready and being alert. Some of the virgins, we were told, had more wisdom than the others. Wisdom because they were ones who came prepared. The foolish ones simply did not think ahead enough and prepare for the eventuality that the bridegroom would be coming late. We can identify with this if we look at how we thought about death perhaps in our earlier years. Perhaps we didn't think much about death, especially if we were healthy and we were energetic. And yet, even if we lost someone who was close to us through illness or an accident, it could remind us all that we all will die. But it doesn't necessarily remind us to be prepared for our own death. Illness and loss of our loved ones can leave us shaken, and our desire to be with those who have died can help us see the necessity then of preparing for our own death. Like these virgins in the parable today, every single one of us are awaiting the arrival of the bridegroom, all the while looking forward with hope to being in his company in the world to come. And so we have to ask ourselves, are we ready? Are we prepared? It's at the end of the parable where the words of Jesus summarize for us the lesson that we can learn from it. And what does he say? Therefore, stay awake, for you know neither the day nor the hour.